I'm not going to open with a stat or a strategy or a step-by-step system. I'm going to open with a story, because sometimes life hands you a moment so perfectly designed to teach you something that would be doing everyone a disservice if I kept it to myself. And then the airplane just loses power. Like the whole thing shuts down, okay? Once. The flight attendants look a little bit concerned. And then again, all the power shuts down. Air conditioning shuts off. It's 95 degrees, by the way. The aircraft has had a mechanical issue. We could not continue to Greece. We were turning around for an emergency landing back in Germany. And then the part that made every single person on the plane go completely still, the aircraft had too much fuel on board to land safely. And I want to be clear again, I was alone, completely solo, in a foreign country, and did not speak their language. No travel companion, no colleague next to me to talk to, no one I could look at and say, hey, are you okay? Entrepreneurship feels exactly like this. That travel day gave me 5 reminders I'm going to carry for the rest of my career. Hey, welcome back to The Digital Shift. I'm Jessica Green, CEO and founder of the Self-Made Hub, your business strategist, your mentor, and your favorite unapologetic systems nerd. And if you are brand new here, I am so glad you are here. Stay with me today because this one is quite different. I am coming in from currently in Croatia, Branovic, Croatia, and I have a story for you. I'm not going to open with framework today. I'm not going to open with a stat or a strategy or a step-by-step system. I'm going to open with a story, because sometimes life hands you a moment so perfectly designed to teach you something that would be doing everyone a disservice if I kept it to myself. And this is one of those moments. And it's so why I'm recording this on the go with my laptop, no mic, no fancy lighting, in my hotel room. If you're driving, keep driving, but listen. If you're working out, keep going, but tune in. If you're folding laundry or making dinner or doing whatever you do when this podcast is on, perfect. Stay right here with me. And I'll be honest with you, if I didn't have some of my favorite podcasts downloaded on these travels that I've been on with no Wi-Fi on certain flights, et cetera, I would have been a little bit lost. And it's really great to be able to tune into your mentors when you're on the go and life hands you some days where things don't go exactly as planned. And I'm going to share what just happened to me on a couple of flights in the last few days. You know what I'm about to share? I can't do anything but laugh at this moment. I think I talked to God faster, more rapidly, and more times in 30-second intervals than I ever have in my entire life. And listen, by the end of this episode, you're going to see your business and yourself a little differently. It started at 6 a.m. in the morning in Budapest. I'm going to set the scene for you. By the way, Budapest is one of the most beautiful cities I have ever been to, and I have traveled quite a bit. It was very clean and nice, and the people were friendly. And if you couldn't find somewhere to eat, then you do not like food, because there was a restaurant every 5 feet, outdoor cafes. Oh, it was just amazing. Typical classical European, but in such a beautiful city that not as many people go to as like Paris and France and London and all of those things. Budapest was really great. I digress. I had a very early wake up call because I had an extremely early flight to try to make enough connections to get to Kos, Greece in time to meet my husband. I grabbed my suitcase, headed down to the hotel lobby, and started what I fully expected to be a completely routine travel day, except for long. It was just the way that these flights worked out. There's not a whole lot that flies into Kos. And so I had to take what I could get, and we had to make a last minute change because we weren't even supposed to be going there. We were supposed to be going to Crete. Long story for another day, but I was flying solo, just me, headed to meet Ken in Kos, Greece. I started off the morning at the airport. I got there quite early because you just never know with international travel, right? You just never know. I got there and I had a lot of time on my hands. So decided to sit and read a book for a little while, decided to get something to eat. And in a couple hours, I was going to be getting on my plane to Dusseldorf, Germany, way out of the way for where I was going, by the way. So you look at all this on a map and you're like, Jessica, why were you even doing that in the first place? Trust me, it wasn't the plan. But when travel plans change at the last minute and you're not in control of those, which is something I have had to learn over these last few days, is that I think God sent me on this journey so that I could learn that I am not always going to be in control and I'm going to have to trust in him. Okay. What lesson number one for me? But I was flying solo, just me. If you know what my husband does, if you've listened to some of our podcasts before, if you're one of our followers, if you are one of our students, you'll know I talk about it a lot. He's a corporate aircraft mechanic. He's had a whole career of doing this from the Navy all the way through to working on all kinds of corporate jets, private planes owned by private individuals. So their schedules can change whenever they feel like it, right? I can't always just travel with him. Sometimes I can, if there's enough room on the plane, depending on where we're going. No problem. But sometimes the plane is full with family and their friends and the things that they're doing. If I want to travel, I just have to take my own airplane. No big deal, right? I have traveled alone and solo so much for business that is not really a big deal. I won't say that I've traveled a ton internationally by myself. So that's always going to be a little bit, but this was quite different because we were going to be hitting so many different places so quickly. My head was spinning and there was a lot of different flights on a lot of different airlines that I had never even heard of before, right? You always have that little like, oh, I'm so used to flying X, Y, or Z in the United States and even some international travel. I usually take Delta everywhere. If not Delta, then it's going to be like Southwest or American Airlines or something like that. Well, I had to pick some flights on some random airlines that maybe over here are popular, but back at home they're not. So, anyways, I have a layover in Dusseldorf, Germany, a connection to get to Kass. And my total travel time, manageable, but long. I've done longer. I wasn't worried about that. But I got to Dusseldorf. I found a seat at the gate, reached for my backpack, and immediately knew something was wrong. And this is not even the crazy part. It's just another added loop to the story. But my entire backpack was soaked, not damp, not a little wet around the bottom, but literally soaked and dripping when I picked it up. And I was like, oh no, my whole Awala bottle had completely emptied itself inside my bag. The laptop sleeve, the chargers soaked, the notebook, the cords, the one bag I had literally everything I needed in soaked. So I just stared at the floor for about 30 seconds, looked around at who was watching my bag dripping and laughed because honestly, what else are you going to do? Like get angry, get mad, throw the bag? No, it had everything in it. I was like, all right, my brain immediately goes to how can I fix this? So I travel with this well, first of all, I was like, let me find a bathroom. I'll try to get some like paper towel. I'll try to empty my backpack out on the counter in the bathroom and use one of those like dryers to try to dry it out. But man, there's so many little things in my backpack. As you know, you probably travel, you have like this medicine and Advil and a brush and this and hair clips and books and notebooks and plugs and cords and so many different things. So I get into the bathroom and there's literally no counter. There's just two sinks and no counter space. I was like, okay, this is great. So I was like, all right, let me grab some wads of paper towel, go back out of the bathroom, sit my bag down on some empty airport lounge seats and see what I can do about soaking some of this up. And then I was like, wait a second. I travel with this little portable tiny fan, the kind I use in hotel rooms because I can't sleep without white noise and a little bit of air blowing on me. By the way, I should link in the comments the one that I bought for this trip. I bought one for me. I bought one for Ken, and they've been like game changing. If you can't sleep in hotel rooms without a fan on and you're my type of person, I have got literally the solution for you. It is the coolest, most compact little fan ever. And it's USB chargeable and it wasn't expensive at all. So anyways, I'm unloading my backpack all over the airport seats and people are staring at me like, what is this lady doing? I looked a little bit crazy. P.S. Solo. I mean, just keep reminding you that I'm by myself and most people there are not speaking English. Everyone's speaking German. We are in Germany. And so you don't know who can or knows English. I definitely don't know German. So, everybody there, all the announcements, everything was in German. So I unload my whole backpack. I get out my tiny little fan and I prop it up. I turn it on high speed and I've got a long layover. So I'm just going to let it dry. Right. And it worked like a champ. That thing stayed charged through that entire extravaganza. It dried out a dripping backpack almost all the way. Was there still some like damp spots? Of course there was, but OMG, was it a lifesaver. But you know, you like that's the thing. You have to find solutions. Like you have to go to that moment in time where you're like, okay, this is not ideal. I have a very wet backpack. I have my laptop in here that is counting on me for the next 2.5 weeks while we travel. I got to figure out how to dry this stuff out and quickly. So I just, people were looking at me like I'm running some kind of like MacGyver operation on the actually, no, wrong story. I was like, MacGyver, isn't that the one that had the German beer called Dusseldorf? No, I'm going to totally date myself. It was Magnum PI. No, it was, oh my gosh, what was it? There was it'll come to me. Anyways, that's where Dusseldorf, the beer I found out Germany came from on that TV show. And gosh darn it, I can't think of the name of the show. Maybe it was Magnum PI. No. Anyways, I dried everything out, right? And I remember thinking, okay, that was today's adventure. We move on. I texted my husband. I'm like, you're never gonna guess. My wallet is this big. It's a large size wallet, and I literally it was full, and it dumped out all over my bag. Honestly, I had no idea what was actually coming next. After several delays, gate change, telling us that the jet bridge wasn't working, more delays, we push back from the gate, and then the airplane just loses power. Like the whole thing shuts down. Okay. The flight attendants look a little bit concerned and they get it going again. And then again, all the power shuts down. Air conditioning shuts off. It's 95 degrees. By the way, let me add in it's 95 degrees. And then they get it back up and running. I'm like, okay, good. We're going. We are totally delayed at this point by like an hour. And boom, power goes out again. I'm like, OMG, I don't even want to go up in this airplane like this. Everything seemed horrible from that moment forward. I was like, I don't think we should be doing this. At that point, every passenger really on the plane was looking around at each other, probably thinking the same thing. I wouldn't know because they were talking to each other. I was solo. They were speaking German. I speak English. So should this plane really be taking off right now? I'm certain is what was going through everybody's brains. They got the power restored. We headed down the runway. We took off. And I'll be honest, I was already uncomfortable in saying a lot of prayers to my Lord. Okay. I was freaking out, already not quite at peace with what was happening. And remember, I know more than the average bear because my husband works on airplanes for a living. So I also know and can be assured that they are not going to take off in that airplane if they do not think that it is airworthy. However, we are in another country, okay? And you just don't know. And so about 15 minutes into the flight, actually, let me tell you this. We're still on our way up, and I'm just really uneasy, and my brain's going to all the worst imaginable things. And I'm like, this plane is not making it to CAS. It's just not. They're going to turn this thing around. I already know it. That was too many things. I just know this plane is not going to CAS. And so about 15 minutes up in the air, and I start to feel us turning to the left, kind of sharp. And I was like, yep, they're turning this thing around. And then a couple minutes more goes by. Seems like we're still kind of making that left-hand turn, and the captain comes over the speaker. The aircraft has had a mechanical issue. We could not continue to Greece. We were turning around for an emergency landing back in Germany. And then the part that made every single person on the plane go completely still, the aircraft had too much fuel on board to land safely. So we are going to circle and eliminate some fuel. So for the next 45 minutes, we circled over Germany, dumping fuel, waiting for it to be light enough so that we could touch down safely. Now, again, I know too much because my husband is an aircraft mechanic on planes. So most recently, and horrible, horrible incident that happened in the United States just a few months ago is, I believe it was a UPS plane. It could have been FedEx, but I think it was a UPS plane. Went to take off, I think in Tennessee, Nashville area. And I think the plane was going to Hawaii, and the plane was taking off, and they decided to set it back down because it was not going, and which is against regulation, by the way. They have to complete the takeoff. They can't abort. And there was too much fuel, and that whole plane exploded, and it could have caused a lot more devastation, hence why they are not abort a takeoff. But so I know what can happen when there's too much fuel on board when you first are off on a flight. And that's all I could picture in my head was like, we can't land this plane. There's too much fuel on the plane because if they land and anything goes awry, this thing's exploding. Okay. So these are all the things that are going through my head, you guys. If you've ever experienced an emergency landing, I genuinely hope you never have to. It is a feeling I cannot fully describe until you have been inside that airplane, looking down at the ground, praying for your life that this plane actually can make these 15 million turns, dump the fuel, and land safely. I will say that this airline, to remain nameless, not Delta, did not communicate with the passengers all day very clearly at all. They could have reassured us. Okay, mind you, after all this is said and done, and I get to my final destination, the next day was at dinner with Ken and the two pilots of his airplane. And after explaining what went on, they're like, Jess, you really probably didn't even need to worry because X, Y, and Z. And they would not have circled that many times dumping fuel if there was something like where the plane was going to mechanically just shut down in the middle of the air. They're going to get you landed. They're going to take the chance of getting you landed safely, which 9.9 times out of 10, you're going to be just fine, even with that much fuel on board. They were dumping fuel as an extra precaution, not because they could not land. See, all those things could be told to us. We were told that they needed to get rid of fuel, but we weren't told how serious the problem was. All we knew is that the plane shut down 3 times before we even took off. We land. The cabin got really quiet. We land. Everyone you can tell is praying. It's just not another delay. This is horrible. Some people were crying. Some people were staring out the window at the ground that suddenly felt so far away, at least to me. And I remember just praying nonstop, thinking about my family, thinking about Luke, thinking about our girls, thinking about Ken waiting for me in Greece, not knowing, completely unaware of what was happening at 30,000 feet with no Wi-Fi. So I couldn't communicate with anybody. And I want to be clear again, I was alone, completely solo in a foreign country and did not speak their language. No travel companion, no colleague next to me to talk to, no one I could look at and say, hey, are you okay? And hear them say it back. Just me, my thoughts and my prayers in a plane full of strangers circling over Germany. We landed safely. And I do not think I have ever genuinely been more grateful to see a runway in my entire life. But the day was far from over. We were escorted off the plane, back into the airport terminal, and this is where it got really interesting. Every single announcement in German, every direction being given to the crowd in German, every gate change, every update, every instruction, German. And as far as I could tell, I was the only person standing in that terminal who had absolutely no idea what anyone was saying. I was just looking at faces and starting to be able to understand whether they were upset, mad, angry, happy, or if things were moving smoothly. If their faces were saying that they were mad, angry, sad, or happy, right? You could kind of tell what was going on. And no one was leaving the area, right? I felt like, all right, they're waiting around for more answers. And so I had a choice at that moment. I could wait for someone to notice me. I could stand there and hope that eventually someone would translate something, give me direction, tell me what to do, or I could lead myself through it. What do you think Jessica Green did, right? I chose to lead. I did not wait for direction. I did not stand at the back of the crowd hoping the situation would resolve itself. I did not let the chaos of not understanding the language become an excuse for not taking action. I found the nearest gate agent. I walked directly up to her and I asked one question. What would you do if you were me? She laid out the clear 3 possible outcomes. They might cancel the flight entirely. They might bring a new aircraft, or they might repair the same one and just put us back on it. Okay, I thanked her. I had 3 options. And before she'd even finished walking away, I was already on my phone booking a backup flight for the following morning. I did not wait to see what was going to happen. I did not sit down and process my feelings about the emergency landing. I did not wait for an announcement in a language I understood. I didn't even stop to call my husband. He knew what was going on. I did text him. I let him know, but I did not call him. I got on and booked myself an alternative solution. I started looking for hotels in the area, found that there was one right in the airport. I was ready to book my room so that I could just grab my bags, go stay in the room, wait till tomorrow morning for the next flight option. I created options immediately for myself, solo, in a foreign country where nobody was speaking my language. When no one's there to tell you what to do, you will find out exactly what kind of leader you actually are. About an hour later, an announcement the aircraft had been repaired. And then came the moment that produced the most memorable collective look I've ever seen on a group of strangers' faces. They were not bringing a different airplane for us. They were putting us back on the same airplane that just had all those problems. And every single person on that flight looked at someone next to them, and then we all got back on. We sat down. Well, I shouldn't say all. There were a few passengers who decided that was not for them. They were done. And then nothing. We sat there for an hour on the ground, 95-degree heat, no air conditioning, nothing running, just sitting there while they finished whatever they were finishing. I will not pretend I was not praying again, but I also noticed something in myself in that hour. I had already done everything I could. The backup flight was booked. The gate agent had been consulted. I had taken every action that was available to me. So I sat in the sweltering cabin and I made peace with not being in control of what happened next. Eventually, the engines fired up. Everything checked out. We took off. And this time, we made it. Thank God. When I finally walked into my hotel room, I shouldn't say even walked into my hotel room, my wonderful, wonderful husband left the hotel and took a taxi all the way back to the airport that I was coming into and just sat there and waited for me for 2 hours. So that when I got off that airplane after that whole experience, I just had him there waiting for me to hail the cab, grab my bags, and swoop me back to the hotel. And it was almost 1 a.m. in the morning by the time we were able to crawl in bed. So I started off, left my hotel in Budapest at 6 a.m. 19 hours later, completely alone through all of it, I was finally there, exhausted, relieved, and grateful, and lying in a bed that night. One thought kept running through my mind. Entrepreneurship feels exactly like this. We all start this journey with a destination in mind. Am I right? A vision of what our business is going to look like, a goal we're going to keep moving toward, a version of our life that we are building in the direction of. And then life happens. The launch gets delayed. The ad campaign doesn't convert. The contractor disappears. The client you were counting on changes her mind. The funnel breaks, and the worst possible timing of it is always how it happens, right? You think you're headed in one clear direction, and suddenly you're circling, dumping fuel, wondering if you're actually going to land where you intended. That travel day gave me 5 reminders I'm going to carry for the rest of my career. And then I think you need to hear them. Okay. So, number 1, expect turbulence. Expect it and stop being surprised by it. Here's the truth. Most people in entrepreneurship will not say this directly to you. If you build a business expecting every week to go according to plan, expecting smooth launches and easy closes and predictable revenue and a team that always performs, you will spend most of your time feeling like something's gone wrong, when in reality, nothing has gone wrong. You've just encountered the conditions that have always come with this territory. Turbulence. Growth is messy. Scaling is uncomfortable. Building something real, especially as a woman who's running a business and also showing up in every other area of her life, is genuinely hard work in genuinely unpredictable conditions. The turbulence is not a sign you're failing. The turbulence is a sign you are flying, my friend. When that plane started losing power on the runway, not once, not twice, but 3 times, the passengers who catastrophized immediately, who assumed the worst before we had any real information, who let uncertainty spiral into panic, those were the hardest people to settle once we'd actually like landed safely and had to come up with a plan. And the ones who took a breath, who waited for real information before they decided what the situation meant, who stayed in their body and stayed present, they moved through it faster and calmer, not because they felt less, but because they did not spend their energy on the story before they knew the facts. Your business turbulence works exactly the same way. The bad week does not mean the business is broken. The hard launch does not mean the offer is wrong. The slow month does not mean you have failed. It means you are building something in real live conditions. And the faster you stop being surprised by this turbulence, the faster you can actually navigate it. Turbulence doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're flying. And the goal was never to avoid it. The goal is to become someone who knows how to navigate through it. A study published by the Journal of Business Venturing found that 96% of entrepreneurs reported at least one significant business setback in their first 5 years. And the primary differentiator between those who scaled and those who stalled was not talent, capital, or even strategy. It was the ability to reframe setbacks as information rather than failure. Turbulence is data. It is telling you something. The question is whether you're calm enough to hear it. Lesson 2, create your contingency plan before you need it and act upon it immediately. Here's the part of that day that I keep coming back to. When that gate agent laid out 3 possible outcomes, cancel, new plane, or repair the same one, I did not go sit down and think about it. I didn't even pause. I actually remember, and I'll probably remember this forever. I had my phone just like this. I set it down on the counter right at the gate agent's desk while everybody else was scurrying and scattering and sitting down and trying to figure out what they were doing. I literally had my head down on the table. I was trying to see what was available. There was not going to be anything else available that day besides the flight I was on. So I was looking into the next day. I was alone, completely solo, no one to consult with, no one to split the decision with, no one to even look and say, what do you think we should do? It was just me. So before the gate agent had even walked away, before I had any idea of what was going to happen next, I already had my phone out and booking the backup flight for the next morning. Because here's what I know about high pressure situations. The time to create your plan B is not after the plan A has fully collapsed. It's the moment you can see the possibility that it might. In business, this looks a lot different, like a lot of different things, a lot of them. It looks like having a follow-up sequence built before your launch even happens. So that when the live event ends, the nurture doesn't stop. It looks like having your team's processes documented before the person who knows them best decides to leave. It looks like having more than one lead generation channel so that when one platform has a bad algorithm week, your pipeline doesn't dry up overnight. I've been through all of these situations, by the way. It looks like having a cash reserve so that slow months don't become a crisis. The best entrepreneurs that I know do not just build the thing they hope will work. They think 3 moves ahead. They create options before they need them. They stay flexible in their methods without ever losing sight of the destination. I never lost sight that I was going to make it to coast Greece. I just knew I had to figure out alternative methods to get there. And when the moment comes, and it will, they do not wait for someone to tell them what to do. They act fast. They start making decisions. Hope is not a strategy, and waiting for someone to give you direction is not leadership. Create your own contingency plan before you need it. And the moment you need it, move. Just move. Take action. Number 3, ask the right question and find someone who has the answer. I did not speak German, not a word. I was standing in a foreign airport surrounded by announcements I could not understand, watching a crowd move in directions, smile, laugh, get angry, sad. I could not interpret. Completely alone, no idea what the next move was supposed to be. So I had 2 options. I could let that stop me, or I could walk up to someone who did know and ask. And here's what I want you to really hear about that moment. I did not need to speak the language. I did not need to know the airport. I did not need to understand every announcement that had been made. I just needed to ask the next right question, the next one, not 10 years down the road. I needed the next right question. I didn't need to know what time we would make it to coast. There were so many things I didn't need to know. I just needed to know the next right question so that I could make the next right decision. And what would you do if you were me? Turned out to be the most valuable question I could have asked, because it was not the question about information. She didn't want to give him any more information. She'd already said to everybody that we weren't going to get any more information for like at least another hour. I think about how many entrepreneurs are standing in their own version of that terminal right now, surrounded by noise they cannot interpret, watching everyone else seem to know exactly where they're going, feeling like they're the only one who does not have the answers and staying stuck, not because the answer doesn't exist, but because they have not asked for it yet. You do not need to know everything. You never did. You need to be humble enough to find the person in the room who does, and willing enough to actually ask. That is what mentors are for. That is what community is for. That is what investing in yourself is for. So that when you're standing alone in an unfamiliar airport, you are not relying on luck. You have already built the relationships with the people who know the terrain. You do not need to know everything. You never did. You just have to ask the next right question and be in a room with people who can answer it. So research from the Small Business Administration found that entrepreneurs who work with a mentor generate 7 times more revenue growth. Hear that. 7 times more revenue growth than those who try to navigate it alone. Not because they're more talented and not because they work harder, because they stopped trying to figure out a foreign airport without asking for directions and started investing in people who already knew the way. Amen. All right. 7 times, 7 times, 7 times more revenue when they had a mentor. Okay, I'll stop now. Number 4, stay calm while everyone else is panicking. That's what leadership actually looks like. I want to be really honest. I was scared on that plane. I was genuinely deeply in my body scared. You can ask my Aura ring because it tracked every moment of time of that 45 minutes. And it said that my heart rate was through the roof, right? Beating through my chest. I was definitely scared in my own body. I prayed more in those 45 minutes of circling than I have in long stretches of ordinary life. Okay. I thought about my family. I thought about the people waiting for me. I thought about what I had not said and who I had not called and all the things you can think about when the ground feels so very far away and the situation is not in your control. Fear was absolutely present, scared to death. And I was alone, completely, entirely alone, with no one to anchor to but myself. And here's what I also noticed: the fear did not have to be in charge of me. It didn't. I didn't have to let it take me away. There's a difference between feeling afraid and letting the fear make your decisions. I watched a flight attendant move through the cabin during the circling, calm voice, steady hands, checking on people one by one, doing her job with a professionalism that I think everyone in that plane felt. Not because she wasn't afraid, but because the people around her needed her steadiness more than they needed her to be honest about the fear in that moment. That is leadership. Leadership is not the absence of fear. It is not pretending the situation is better than it is. It is not performing confidence when you do not feel it. Leadership is making good decisions when the fear is real. It's staying present when everyone around you is panicking and spiraling. It is communicating clearly the situation, even when it's still unclear. And it's taking the next action, even imperfectly, when staying frozen would be the easier choice. Your team does not need you to be fearless. Your clients do not need a performance. Your business does not need a version of you that has it all figured out. What all of them need is for you to stay in the pilot seat, even when the instruments are going haywire, and keep flying that plane. Because when the CEO panics, everyone panics. Okay. And when the CEO stays steady, even in uncertainty, the whole team takes a breath. Your team, your clients, and your business don't need your perfection. They need your presence. Stay in the cockpit, keep flying. A study from the Center for Creative Leadership found that leaders who demonstrate emotional regulation under pressure, the ability to stay calm and think clearly in high stakes situations, were rated 23% more effective by their teams and produced measurably better business outcomes than those who defaulted to reactive behavior under stress. Calm is not passive. Calm is a competitive advantage. All right, number 5, a change in the flight plan does not change the destination. This is the one I keep coming back to. This is one I will carry for the rest of my career. When that captain came over the speaker and told us that we were turning around, my destination didn't change. Kos, Greece was still where I was going. Ken was still waiting for me. The trip I'd been planning and looking forward to was still going to happen. The flight plan changed completely. The destination didn't move an inch. And I think that distinction, that very specific distinction, is one of the most important things that we can hold on to as entrepreneurs, especially in a season where so many things feel like they are not going according to plan. Because here's what I have watched happen to brilliant, talented, hardworking women in business. The detour starts to feel like the destination. The delay starts to feel like a verdict. And the pivot starts to feel like proof that the original vision was wrong. And they stop. Not because the destination disappeared, but because the deviation from the plan felt like a failure. Sometimes that is the plan. Sometimes the emergency landing repositions you for the flight that actually gets you there. I'm sitting here telling you this story and realizing so many times in this last 3 years of the creation of Self-Made Hub and the Tech Savvy Mentors that we've done all of that. And we always kept our eye on the prize. Our flight plan has changed multiple times. Our destination is still as grounded today as it was 3 years ago. That destination has not changed. It will not change. The flight plan has definitely been adjusted more times than I would like to admit. Sometimes the slow quarter is building the infrastructure that will bring the big quarter you'll need. Sometimes the failed launch reveals the messaging shift that unlocks everything after it. The past is the path. It's almost never what we drew on paper in the first place, but the destination. The business we are building, the clients we're meant to serve, the impact we're meant to make, that does not change. That is exactly where we are going. We just cannot see the route from here. Delays don't mean you're alone or you're done. Detours don't mean that you've failed. A change in the flight plan does not change the destination. All right, I want you to picture something with me. So picture the version of you a year from now, 2 years from now, who's been through the turbulence, the bumps, the bruises, who has had the emergency landing, who has stood completely alone in a terminal she did not understand and found her way through anyways, who has climbed back onto the same plane that scared her the first time and taken off again. That version of you is not someone who never feels the fear. She is someone who's learned what to do with it. She's not someone who never has had a bad launch or a hard quarter or a season that looks like nothing like the plan she started. She's someone who has built a business, an identity that can hold those seasons without breaking. She knows how to adjust the flight plan without losing sight of that destination. She knows which questions to ask. She knows who to ask them to. She has stopped trying to navigate it alone. She knows how to stay calm in the cockpit when everything's uncertain. And she knows with a certainty that only comes from having circled and landed and taken off again. That destination has not moved. That's the entrepreneur you're becoming, not despite the turbulence, but because of the turbulence. The goal was never to avoid the turbulence. The goal is to become the kind of leader who knows how to fly through it. So if your business is in a season where you feel like you are circling right now, if you're wondering why it is taking longer than you thought it would, if every time one problem gets fixed, another one shows up behind it, if the plan you started with looks almost nothing like where you actually are, keep going. The destination shouldn't have moved. The flight plan just adjusted. And sometimes the unexpected detours, the emergency landings, the seasons where you're alone in a foreign terminal, not understanding a single word being said around you, those become the stories that shape you into the entrepreneur you were always meant to become. I know this is true for me. That 19-hour travel day, solo, scared, soaked backpack and all, gave me 5 lessons I will carry into this business for the rest of my life. And I hope today, and in this episode, it gave you something you needed to hear. If you're in a season right now where you know you need support, where you need someone in your corner who's been through the turbulence, who can help you navigate yours, that's exactly what we do inside of our Self-Made Hub and Tech Savvy School. It's not just a tech thing, it's business strategy too. You can join our next challenge and spend 5 days with us and see if we're the guides and the mentors to get you through the turbulence that you have in your business right now when it comes to tech and AI and automation. Or you can book a call with us and see if we're a good fit for you in our tech school. A real conversation can be had about where you are, where you want to go in building the right systems and the strategy, what that can look like for your specific business. If you want to book your call, just go to our website, self-made.biz. The link is going to be in the show notes. Or if you just want to spend 5 days with us as a fly on the wall or in one of our platinum seats, join our next 5-day challenge. Go high level without the guessing. It's 5 days to cleaning up your tech mess. And if today's episode hit someone, a woman in your life that has a small business that's been through some of this in the middle of her own circling, who needs to hear that destination has not changed, share this one with her. That's the whole reason why we do this. And I will see you on the next episode. I hope you enjoyed the story today. Long, but a good lesson. And I had to share it while I was still on the road in Croatia, still have lots of flights to go, lots more destinations to see, and probably more stories to tell. See you in the next episode. If you're getting value from these conversations, don't let this be the only episode that you listen to. Every episode of this podcast is designed to help you build a smarter business, one with real systems behind the scenes, not just ideas, motivation, or hustle. We break down what's actually working right now when it comes to automation, content, follow-up, and scaling without the burnout. If you want to see how all of this comes together in real life, I highly recommend watching the Self-Made Hub demo. Inside the Self-Made Hub, you'll see how entrepreneurs turn content into leads and leads into conversations and conversations into consistent sales using simple automated systems that don't feel overwhelming or cold. You can watch the demo anytime at self-made.biz/demo. Then queue up another episode, because the shift doesn't happen from one conversation. It happens when you start connecting all the dots. And I'll see you in the next episode.